Hey everybody, we're back! Welcome to Randomly Selected, powered by the Silver Room. First and foremost, before we get started, thank you to everybody that came to Block Party, and thank you to everybody that supported the Harpercourt Summer Music Series. If you were in Chicago, you know exactly what I'm talking about, and we talked about Block Party a lot this year so far. We really appreciate everybody's patronage. Thank you a million times. Thank you. Today, though, we're back. It's been a minute, and we have one of the dopest, funniest people you'll ever meet in your life. Lisa Beasley is on our show today. We talk about her growing up in Gary, Indiana. Yes, sir, GI in the building. We talk about what the environment was like there for her, and we shout out a very famous resident of Gary, Indiana, Kelly Chukwu Benfrey, and how he played a role in her poetry. Yes, Lisa Beasley does poetry. And her graphic design work. Note to all the gentlemen, you already know who Lisa Beasley is based on her graphic design work, and you'll hear about that more in just a moment. Randomly Selected, powered by the Silver Room. We're back, and thanks again. Here's Lisa Beasley. How you doing?
I'm doing really good. I got to get up today and make coffee and do my normal routine.
Nice.
So I feel good.
Sweet. That was just having that same conversation. Normal routines are nice when you can execute them.
Yes.
When you can execute. We generally start with everybody. And by the way, thanks for being on today.
Sure.
Truly appreciate that.
I'm excited.
Yeah. This has been a while in the making.
It's been 7 years in the making. I run into you once a year, and every year we talk about doing this.
That is a fact.
Sometimes 2 or 3 times a year.
Your daughter has gotten exponentially bigger since the last time I saw her, which was kind of weird. She goes earlier, she's like, I don't remember you.
Yeah, at every stage of her life, we've been leading up to this day.
That's right. I generally like to start with people's origin story. You're from GI.
Yep.
What was your Gary, Indiana experience like?
So while I was there, it was fine because I was a child.
Yeah.
So I was like protected in a sense. It wasn't until I went away to college that I realized, I was like, oh, that's what? So in hindsight, as an adult, I'm like, at the end of the day, I was coming of age in the murder capital of the world.
Yeah.
So the thing about that is like, ideally women and children are kind of like protected and off, what's the word? Like, not off guard, but what is it? Off limits, right? So being like 9 years old and playing outside and then somebody coming up to me and being like, okay, it's time to go in and give me some candy. And I go in and I'm like, oh yeah, well the Kool-Aid's inside, that's lit. And I don't know that like a shootout's happening right outside. Right. So it was wild, but it was fun because I was a kid. So like there's the Dub, Lou Wallace was a high school out there. And I remember elementary school got out at 2:30, so we'd always have to walk past the school before it got out at 3 or 3:30 or whatever. And one time there was like this big fight happening, well, a fight between 2 grown men. And when you little, it's fun. So we was like cheering them on, yeah. And then one dude was like, okay, I'm finna go to the trunk. And we knew what that meant, but we ran off happy because we was like, it's getting real. Like, that's insane. That's not healthy. But I had fun, and it wasn't until I got older that I realized how much I was traumatized.
And I'm not from Gary, Indiana. And I have many great folks from GI, and one of them I'm going to mention in a bit when we talk about the poetry aspect of your life.
Ooh, you found some deep cuts.
Did a little research. The environment there then and the environment there now has, to the best of your knowledge, has much changed in Gary?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's changed because it's not that many people there anymore. So when I was there, we had like 26 elementary schools that all funneled to like between 6 and 9 middle schools to like the top big 4 or 3 high schools. And since then, I don't know how many schools there are, but the population has dwindled drastically. Yeah. And now it's just abandoned. So I don't know. I don't keep tabs up on like the violence or whatever. I definitely know we don't hold the per capita murder rate isn't as high as it was.
Used to be, right.
And simply because like if you think about it, the 90s in Gary was a vibe. The 3 strikes was here, so that was sending people out to never return, and it was just like different. So now my mom is still there. And it's just not that many people there. It's just like abandoned. It's like, it looks like a ghost town in certain places where it's just blocks and blocks and blocks of abandoned buildings. And it's one of those things where you can almost understand how it'll be hard to even start to repair the city, because then the question is, well, if you fix up that hotel, what about that convention center?
Right.
And then what about that? And
Right.
then what about that? And then before you know it, you got $1 trillion project that just can't get done.
The last time I rode through Gary, I rode through the downtown, and I was like, whoa. It looked like something had happened, and just everybody just...
It looks like I Am Legend.
Yes, exactly. That is it. It's kind of startling, considering when I was little, Gary was like Chicago's cousin. Mayor Hatcher was mayor then. It just a million years ago, but there was a bigger connection between Chicago and Gary, Black Chicago and Black Gary, Indiana.
Yeah.
So there's that. I know that you have done more than a little bit of poetry in your life. A good brother who made his transition a few years back.
Kelly Chukwu?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Kelly was my man.
Yeah.
Kelly Chukwu Brinfrey was... he represented Gary, Indiana so hard. He had me scared to not go to Gary, Indiana.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What and I'm Ashe to the ancestor. That's my brother, and I'm glad you picked up on where I was going. Did he have any influence on your poetry?
Yeah, so I had started doing poetry around, that was like between 2000 and, let's see, I came out of high school in 2004. So between about 2005 to 2008 is when I started doing poetry. And that's when I would be back and forth between college in Memphis and Gary. And while I was at Gary, I worked at a graphic design shop.
Oh, nice. Yes.
51st and Broadway. And so Kelly Chukwu would come in there and get flyers. And so how that eventually worked is eventually they would come to me, because I was a graphic designer doing it,
right.
but I was also doing my own thing. And like, shout out to the owner of Space Age Marketing, because he let me do that.
Yes.
Because he knew that that's what I was doing.
They did a ton of stuff for folks in Chicago.
Yeah. And
Most.
so for a minute, I was designing like the Kenny's Ribs.
Yeah.
Any Adriana's not Adriana's. Adrian's, the
Yes,
club
yes.
on Dixie. Any flyer you saw between like 2010 and 2012 with like the big butt girls, that was my work. So like any Thirsty Thursdays, Wild Out Wednesdays, I knew the websites to go to find the pictures and everything.
Yeah,
that was all me.
Oh, congratulations.
So,
you did excellent work.
Thank you. Got a lot of people drunk on a Wednesday night.
Yeah, you did. Yes, you did.
So he would come in there and do flyers, and then I was, I would, I think maybe do like a couple of open mics or whatever. And then it was known that like, oh, you're a creative and you do this. And then I started meeting and working with him like on his brand, basically.
Nice.
So it was like his logo.
Yeah.
And he was ready to just elevate the brand of it all.
Yeah.
But it was a little bit more than that, because it wasn't just like, do this flyer for me. It was like, do this flyer and we having this event and here's the meaning behind it. And I want something to represent it. And we had like artistic conversations. And I remember I was in my early 20s, and so it wasn't that many people older, especially older Black men, who were in that mentory, artistic, here's another artist, let me support them vibe without being on some funny shit.
Right.
So like that was special. That was really
creepy.
cool. And then and then I met some of his friends that also worked with him, and they had created like the Beautiful Soul Collective, and I did that logo. And then it was like you get to meet the friends that just have 101,000 ideas. So then it was like, I make cupcakes and I do this. So I was just making logos for everybody and all their businesses that are probably not operating now. But niggas be entrepreneurial.
I asked Lisa about her journey, her path, being a poet and being a graphic designer, how all that kind of moved toward the world of stand-up comedy. I asked her about writing for television as well, like maybe SNL? Will we ever see a Lisa Beasley on SNL as either a writer or a character? And I also asked her about writing for Cards for Humanity. I know it's Lisa Beasley, and it's randomly selected.
Yeah, so when I was doing poetry, I was going to school for music. So I majored in jazz and music.
Vocal?
Instrumental, but I did vocal too.
What did you play?
the clarinet, the saxophone, the soprano saxophone. I play the keys by ear, and I write and compose music.
I saw you play the piano.
Yeah.
I saw you play the piano. I saw you on YouTube playing the piano.
Oh, that's so wild. I probably need to take that down.
No. You can't, because it was you. You were portraying Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Oh, yeah.
You can never take that down.
Oh, yeah, that was a good one.
That's a good one. That was brilliant.
So when I was doing the graphic design, I had graduated from college, and I had sold myself on being a performer. And at the time, my focus was musical theater, because I was like, I like music, I can sing, and I love acting. And at that time, I was just always doing the thing that makes sense to me at the time. So I'm like, well, duh, musical theater. Right. I've always wanted to be on Broadway and perform. So the graphic design is what got me through acting school. So, like, I would border everybody's headshots, make business cards, model comp cards, and kind of, like, have my little spending money and some cushion So it was always, like, the thing I was growing, because early on, I understood the concept of, if I want to be an artist, I have to have freedom, and I can't have a regular job. And I was always entrepreneurial, because I used to sell pops in Gary in the hood to people I should not have been selling pops to. So the poetry for me kind of actually ended when I transitioned to Chicago, because the scene was so different. Yeah. Because I was doing it on my own, and it was one of those things where it only took one slam poetry contest for me to realize that that's the part of it that I really didn't vibe with. Because
same here.
I feel like the poetry community markets itself as accepting, and and poetry itself, and that style of poetry is like expression and your deepest thoughts, but people would judge you if you don't have bars.
It's very competitive.
Yeah. And when I saw really that, I was like, I'm good, because I have all the bars and I don't need this. So let me go at.
Yeah. I was going to say stand-up poetry. Competitive, pretty much. Yeah. Competitive poetry, never been my bag. I used to like being in front of an audience and reading my work. And then they like it, cool. If they don't, I'm fine with it. I got it off my chest. But being in a slam, it's like... It
was intense. Like, I only did one, and of course I won it.
Did you?
Yeah. I was like, this is how this is always going to go. And I didn't want to do that. Because this particular one, I remember it came down to a tiebreaker. Yeah. And I remember I had whipped out this poem that I had never performed before and didn't know if I knew it by memory or not. But I was like, yeah, this goes hard. They all do. And like, I was like, I just don't want to do that. Like, I feel like it should. Then I would go back and forth to LA, and then I went to the Poetry Lounge. Okay, yes. And I finally got on there. Yeah. And I saw the egos, and I was like, I'm good. Mm-hmm. So bye.
I with all due respect to all my poetry friends, it's easier being a stand-up comedian than it is being a poet nowadays.
It's brutal, yeah. So the transition out of that was easy, and then I immersed myself in musical theater. Mm-hmm. And then when I came to Chicago, it was about theater. And so I built so for 10 years, I was just like theater, back-to-back shows, like 6 to 9 shows a week, auditioning, shows. And then finally, like, getting an agent to do, like, commercials or shit like that. Yeah. And then what happened was every play that I did, I was the comic relief. Okay. So it would be a straight play, but I was always the character that made it lighthearted and funny. And then eventually I even noticed the trend, because I've always known I was funny, because from childhood, just I've always known that. But I never considered myself a comedian at that point. Mm-hmm. I was like, I'm a comic actress. I'm funny. But then this man named Luther Goins at the Actor Equities office suggested that I go to Second City. And I was like, I don't know what that is, but okay, cool. Because at the time, I was looking for my equity card.
You had no idea about Second City?
I had no idea about Second City. I didn't know who Stephen Colbert was. I knew Tina Fey was a white woman on TV. I didn't know who Amy Poehler was. I didn't watch Parks and Recs. I didn't watch The Office. I didn't give a shit about any of that. Yeah. And so, because I went looking for a job. Right. And so when I went, they were like, the training center. And I was like, bitch, I've been training. I've been working for what? I said, no, bye. And so I left, and that's when I got the show at Court Theater.
Okay.
Which was like my biggest theater gig, where it was a 2-person show. It's the show that I went equity, and it was how I got my voiceover agent, which led to my acting agent. And then I went back to Second City. I was like, y'all ready or no?
Right.
And then that's when they had started the Bob Curry program.
Right.
And then that's how I dove into comedy, because the goal for me has always been TV and film. And so then I saw a clearer path of like how this actually goes and how it actually works. And comedy became like the biggest vehicle.
You said TV and film in relation to Second City. You see yourself being on SNL one day or writing for them?
Absolutely not. And that's because that job is brutal.
I hear.
Brutal.
Yeah.
Even if I was a straight white man with blonde hair, it is brutal. It's brutal. Like on Saturdays, they literally work 23 hours.
Yeah.
So if everybody there was amazing, and if they treated black women like people, I still would not do it, because they work 17 hours a day. And then on Saturdays, 23, like, I'm not exaggerating.
No, I know.
I'm like, what?
Yeah, that's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot on the human body, and try to be funny, and be funny in that.
You doing a 2-hour live show every week?
Yeah,
that's
a vaunted universe too, SNL. But I mean, if we're being honest with each other, if they said if you're doing stand up somewhere and Lorne Michaels is there and he's like, I want to give you a deal, I will pay you.
Yeah, I would tell him, I'd be like, hell no. I would tell him to his face.
You would tell him in the Lorne Michaels voice.
That was one of the reasons why I fired my LA agents and managers, is because I had my plan, but they kept trying to sell me on this path that would lead to SNL. And like people always thought like, that's the end result, that's the end goal. And I've been to SNL to kick it a few times. And even after being there, I'm like, yeah, I'm 100% sold. I never want to do this. New York doesn't have any alleys. It's just like, it's a lot. There's trash everywhere. Like,
shout out to no alleys.
It's just a lot. It's a lot. And it's also just like a wild environment. Like I went with Chris Red a couple of times, and it really is. I was up my day ended at 9 a.m.
Oh, yeah. New York is like that, though.
Yeah. So it's like I wouldn't be able to do anything else. My daughter would not know my name.
Exactly.
It's just like, even if I wanted to, I don't want to, you know?
Yeah.
But the environment is trash for black women, and that is no secret. And me, for as talented as I am, they wouldn't let me do what I feel like if I got on SNL, people here would be like, they ain't using Lisa like she should be used. Right. And I would be just like, an offhand character with just 1 or 2 lines. It's just like, they went that way. When people know I should be playing like the main character that blew up in the news that week or something. Yeah. So, yeah.
And just to kind of round that off, is there like, do you see an opportunity on television?
Oh,
where you would be in a sketch environment with other black folks doing your thing?
1,417 billion trillion %. So, and I do see myself pulling a flex. I do flex fantasies where I'm like, I can see myself hosting SNL. Where something happens where it's like I come on to host. Like that would be fun.
Yeah.
But as far as like a black sketch show, hell yeah. So my improv group, 3P, we were close to getting one with Comedy Central, but the deal didn't work out because we kind of elevated out of the deal that they gave us, because a lot of people don't know that the industry is still also corporate, which means they take forever to do everything. So it was one of those instances where it's like, I knew glued up ain't a word, but I like saying glued up instead of glowed up. But we glue up too fast.
Right.
So by the time they had the deal ready, we was like, yeah, we literally can't afford to not audition for a year. Or, we were working. And then I recently just shot a pilot with a group of black folks. It was all black writers, black directors, and a black producer.
Okay.
And it was a dream. So that's being edited right now, and we're going to shop it around and start I'm starting to do that stuff now.
I got to ask you a question. Mm-hmm. You wrote for Cards Against Humanity?
Yeah.
You're going to have to tell me which cards you wrote, because I've got a couple of editions of those, and I could tell the difference in who was writing those things. Mm-hmm. Give me a couple.
The cards got better with the green pack.
And that's the, okay, word.
Mm-hmm. So right. I don't remember the exact cards that I wrote. Any of them from the green pack that was black leaning, I probably contributed heavily to.
Nice.
The thing about that game is before us, it was 9 white men writing the game.
Oh yeah.
So they were very transparent of like, okay, we're messing up. So I was also there to be like, hey, time to take this card out.
Right.
So that's another reason why the game got better.
It did improve dramatically.
Yeah, because it would just be stuff that I'm like, yo, I don't know if you got the memo, but like people ain't saying that no more. Like
right.
it goes beyond getting canceled, but more like, no, you'd be ruined. And so the funny thing about that job is, since it wasn't full sentences, I treated it as such. So that was the first job where I figured out my working style, which is like, I like to smoke weed while doing things. So I would roll blunts at the table with the argument of, we're not even writing full sentences. I'm not even going, we are really over here analyzing the difference between grandma's dusty balls or grandpa's dusty balls. And we having a conversation about it to see which one is going to go in the game. So don't. Yeah. So yeah, it was very fun writing not full sentences as a job.
Oh, man.
It was the best job.
Yeah, I'm so glad.
Until it wasn't.
Yeah. I'm so glad you told me that. Yeah. What happened that made you, I mean, besides the evolution of your arc and all that?
It was one of those jobs where, one, in my spirit, I don't want to work for 9 white men.
Fact.
Just in my spirit, even if they are great, that's just too many white men. In the era that we're in, it's just like irresponsible for them to want to be 9 white men running a company. For me, it was the way it was practical. The way the schedule fell, it was like Tuesdays and whatever the schedule was, it was in a chunk of day where I really couldn't do anything else, and that was like the only job I could hold down, and it just wasn't paying enough. It was a great like resume builder and like a great like experience, and it was my first official writer's room. And I got to do a lot of cool content. I got to go to Comic-Con, which was my inspiration for understanding how to produce WakandaCon.
Nice.
So it was real good for what it was. But at the end of the day, that was the job where when I quit, I went with the intention of going full-blown entrepreneur. So the announcement to them wasn't like, I can't do this anymore. But it was more so, even though I couldn't do it anymore, but it was more so like, all right, it's my time to go full blown out on me. Yeah. And so on my birthday, June 12th, 2017, is when I look at less of like quitting that and more like, okay, I'm about to do this. Mm-hmm.
Makes sense.
Yep.
Now I got it.
Don't it make sense?
One of my best friends is a Gemini, and I see a bunch of similarities between her and you. Now I get it. Okay. Wrapping that part up, WakandaCon, that's happening again with the release of this new film that actually has characters in it that I'm ready to see them be more Ta-Nehisi Coates than whatever that first, although the first one is dope and all that. I think the second one's going to be better. Yeah.
So this time around, I will not be doing it. I decided that the last one I did was the last one I was going to do.
Okay.
So if they do decide to do it, they have my full support, and I'm going to be hype, and I'll go as an attendee.
For sure.
But yeah, I personally am retired from 2,000 plus person events.
Gotcha.
For now.
Gotcha.
I might come out of retirement like Jordan, but for now, the 23 jersey is retired on the 2,000 plus events.
Word.
Yeah.
You've seen them. I've seen them. The whole world has seen them. It's the impersonation of the mayor of Chicago that has taken the world by storm and opened up a whole new portal for my friend Lisa. We talk about that, the whole journey behind that movement, and how she feels about playing Lori Lightfoot.
Well, I think her number one way of coming for me is to still try to do her own funny content after I've told her I'm the comedian. So when she does reels and stuff, I take that personally. Like Michael Jordan in The Last Dance. I take that personally.
I take that very personally.
I take that personally. It's offensive to me that she tries to be funny. Number one. Because I already told her about it on Twitter. I said, stop. Right. And I'm a little bullheaded and like, you didn't do what I told you to do, so now I'm going to just be mad. So that's the number one way. I think the thing for me about her is sometimes I wish she would sometimes I kind of, my ego wishes for she can't do this, or Lisa must be stopped. Because when you decide to be a large political figure like that, you sign up for that. That's all SNL is. So I'm like, if I was a white man doing J.B. Prisker, nobody would say anything. No. So that's kind of like, because another thing I know is, since my background is political satire, that's another thing a lot of people don't take into account, is that I literally know how to do this in a way that protects me and my comedy.
Yeah.
And also her too, a little bit. Because I could be going in more.
Yeah, you could.
So, Lori, if you listening.
She probably is.
Oh, yeah, she keeps a watchful eye, I know.
She probably is.
She hasn't said anything to me directly, but I 100% know that it would be easier for her if I stopped. But it would also be easier for Chicagoans if she was a better mayor. So it's like, we all can't get what we want. So.
And before we even, oh man, let me get together. Before we go deeper into that part, one of the joints that you did that went unbelievably viral was the hidden laptops, and it was happening right in the midst of the CPS Lori Lightfoot conflict. Personally, it just showed me how astute you were, because that was the issue for me. Like, where are the laptops? And I think one of the things you said is, all right, wait, what time is it? All right, at 8:59, announced at 9 o'clock that there'll be no school tomorrow.
Yep.
And that was so just the accuracy of your very pointed and very perfect criticism of her. What is your mother? You're a Chicagoan. You're a taxpayer. You probably pay property tax, I'm imagining. When you're here, you see what she's doing. What is the Lisa Beasley, not Lori Lightfoot, but Lisa Beasley opinion about what you're seeing?
Well, most of the stuff that I parody are things that affect me directly. Because if I parodied everything she did, I would be online every single day. So it's true. I noticed the things that go the most viral are things that truly get on my nerves. Because I was also like, so she going to school today or no?
Right.
And then I would ask the teachers and they would be like, check your emails in the morning. And I was like, what? Like, what?
I can't do that. Yeah.
And then for me, the next thing my brain goes is, how the hell you got a city full of parents, a city full of parents, not knowing if their kids going to school the next day? What?
That's crazy.
Like, people gotta work. We got shit to do. Yeah. And so like, you just like, no. And then you just keep hearing the escalation of it to the point where it doesn't matter who's wrong or who's right. My life is inconvenienced. So you start to just think like, what is going on? And so when I would hear like accounts from teachers or see like, I've been locked out of my computer, I can't even communicate with my parents, or I can't even I would be like, what is going on that you have, I'm gonna say, millions of parents being like, the fuck?
Yeah.
And it makes me think of, then I start to trickle into like economy stuff of the things people in power do to ensure that adults are working, pretty much kind of our standard, like whatever we got to do to get motherfuckers to work is a thing. So to see that be disrupted or just not thought about or cared about for whatever agenda, I'm like, you're not even following the governmental protocol of making niggas work. So I'm just like, you're doing everything wrong. You know what I mean? So I'm like, I don't get it. You're not looking out for the city in a larger way. If you got parents not knowing, that's so much stress when you getting up in the morning and you don't know whether your kid is going to school or not. I was losing my mind. mind.
I can imagine.
I was online singing musicals about how I was losing my mind. So how I feel about it for real is there are certain things that are just so frustrating. In real life, it is so disheartening to see a woman that looks like me, empowered, and not give a shit about me at all. That's the thing. Because one of my things of even beginning to do Lori Lightfoot, I almost didn't do it because I was like, I don't want to be out here, bashing black women. But then I was like, well, this is why I really have to do it, because she can't be out here embarrassing black women. And the straw for me was I was a little late into looking into what really happened with the whole Anjanette Young thing.
Yeah.
And then I just got pissed off. Black woman to black woman. How dare you?
Yeah.
How dare you attempt to do anything other than be at this black woman's beck and call where the cops busted on her naked black body? Like,
she should have been at her house.
The
She should have pulled
moment
the
she
second
found out.
She should have pulled up at her fucking house.
The moment she found out.
Absolutely.
And everything I saw was the complete opposite of
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And that once again, personal, where I was like, ooh, we don't do that to each other, sis. I got to flame you now. Because what? Yeah.
Where'd you get the clothes from?
Oh, the clothes. So
I have it in my head where you got it, but where'd you get the clothes from?
So the suits, I went to the thrift store.
Okay.
And I just grabbed something. I didn't look for the size or anything. I just grabbed it and bought it. The shirt is my dad's.
Nice.
He has passed away. He was a 3X.
Okay.
So I was like, that's the perfect size.
Yes.
My summer fits I got from Men's Warehouse. And I went to, there's this store, it's a Legacy Boutique, and it's actually pretty cool because in doing this, I actually meet cool Chicagoans that I get to like uplift in some way.
Yeah.
So it's this boutique, it's called Legacy Boutique on 47th, it's like on 47th in Michigan.
Papa Mandine Muhammad.
Yeah,
That's
he
my
sells
man.
like used clothes to men so they can look fresh.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is perfect. So I got my hat from there and my, did I get my shirt from there or my pants? One of them. I knew I needed a summer fit, so I got my hat from there and my pants from there.
Nice.
Yeah.
I am so proud of that character, man.
Me too.
I hate
Thank
that we
you.
have to have it, but I'm glad that you're doing it because nobody else nobody else could do it, and nobody else would make the attempt to really speak to how weird it is when she's trying to bully people, tell people her package is bigger than everybody else's,
it's just like,
run a whole professional football team out of town. There's so many things this woman
wild.
has done.
It's wild. And I can see why people would think it's scary because it's like the Windy City, like this town is wild with the politics, which is why you're not going to see me talking about certain things.
Right.
Like I'm not going to be having a meeting that's like something that would actually really, 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 really happen that exposes some deep. I'm not trying to get thrown in the lake, okay?
For sure.
But because I'm doing it right and because I'm doing literally what she's doing, just elevated, it's protected. But I don't feel like because once again, I'm also from the G, so that's another thing.
Here we go.
So it's like
that's right. Speaking. As we wrap up our conversation with Lisa Beasley, we talk about the Unpolitical Women's Comedy Show and her Laugh Factory residency. I also ask her, as a woman, how she communicates with her daughter. And then we talk about things happening in the world and all that cool stuff. And you get an insight on what's coming up for Lisa Beasley. It's randomly selected.
Yeah, it's so cool. So I had that viral laptop moment where I ended up doing a free show for teachers at the Laugh Factory.
Yes.
And then Curtis, who runs the Laugh Factory, just straight up asked me, he was like, do you want to do a monthly show? And I was like, hell yeah. And I was like, that's so cool. I don't get to talk about how cool it is for me to have a standing monthly show at the Laugh Factory in Chicago. That's like iconic. That's huge.
Yeah.
And while it's still in the beginning stages of it, it don't feel that way or probably look that way. But I'm like, no, I plan on holding that time slot for so long that eventually if I'm not there but the show is still going, that's how I look at it. Yeah.
And I think I've seen most of your stuff. You received an award my buddy Tony Sarabia presented you with something,
yeah.
and you talk about Little Women and how the book was bullshit because the version you read was no one died. One of the characters doesn't die. And you said you had to read it to your daughter who was 10 months old. And you're like, well, fuck it. I'll just give you the real version of Little Women. And you said that book had a big influence on you. And I'm wondering, as a mother, with your job, and in this environment we're living in now, where like literally and figuratively the world is on fire. How are you? I know she can hear me. How are you talking to your daughter about what's going on around you and around her?
Well, for the most part, she doesn't know what's going on around the world because she is 6.
Fact.
So I don't really bother her with world history facts and I also don't like have the news going in my house because I don't need that. So anything that's like a school full of kids was bombed today, it's like she's not getting that. Because I also know on her end, in her world, she's doing the drills.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's that. Mostly where she is at this age, it's about me instilling confidence and the ability to ask questions. And she's very smart, and we talk and communicate a lot, just generally. So for me, mostly now, I've been focusing on like building a foundation of whatever these gender roles that I was raised in, flipping that on its head. And so like, it may seem on the outside looking in that like, oh, she's loud or she's talking back when she's really just asking a good question. Right. So that's kind of been the focus. There are some things that, you can't protect them from because of the internet and like YouTube and kids. It's wild.
That's what I'm hearing.
It is wild because one, they have to have something to do. Right? We don't play outside no more with everybody. And that's not like a dig at society. Like, remember when we used to play outside? No one was watching us. We were on our own. We were doing things we were not supposed to be doing. We were unattended for hours.
Yeah, man. Say word.
So it's like some of that has been replaced by YouTube and electronics. And unfortunately, it is really easy. And it's really like, a lifesaver in some households because if a kid is around you 24/7, that could be a lot on the brain.
Yeah.
So sure, it's like iPad for a couple of hours, especially in the summer. And so sometimes I'll overhear certain things. For me, it's about understanding that there are different types of people and different types of family dynamics because they sell really hard right out the gate. The 2-parent household, the man-woman household. So for me, it's about like really, really, really reinforcing to her that people are different. Like it's he, she, they, and keeping it as normal as just he and she. So if it's something like, I think he or she or they, it's just simple little things like that. One thing I noticed in her books, it could be animals, but it'll be like a mama elephant with like lashes and a daddy elephant scowling. And I'm like, or it's just like, some families just have a mom or just a dad or a mom and a friend or a mom and 2 cousins or like families are different, because I just don't want her to grow up like she's lacking because of what society tells her she should have or where she should be. And that's something I also can't control too, because I think something that I don't know if I could pinpoint it to like older Black millennial generation. We are very sensitive to our kids growing up traumatized because we're at this age where we're learning how we're healing from childhood stuff. And what I'm also reckoning with is I can't control that at all. Yeah. So, because it's her experience. So she could grow up and be like, I'm traumatized that my mama took me to that podcast interview. I'll never know what affects her.
I hope to God this is not something that traumatizes that baby. And again, I cannot begin to tell you how much I appreciate you, how bad I wanted this to happen, and I'm glad we got a chance to make this happen. Asking what's next is kind of very cliche-ish and show business-ish, but I'll ask you on the on the line item of things that you've got for you, what
Mm-hmm.
are some of the things that people should be on the lookout for that you want to do?
Yeah, more independent produced content from me at a very high quality. So making the decision to transition into Tillman Fifi.
Tillman Fifi?
Tillman Fifi.
If you make Tillman
my
Fifi
way,
a character,
right?
I will high five you every time I see you.
Film and television. Embarking on that journey. The Laugh Factory show is going to continue to get better and better, because one thing I am moving away from is, so one thing that was very important to me is that my whole name was in the title of the show.
Yeah.
So eventually Unpolitical Women is going to go away, and it's just going to be Lisa Beasley's comedy show,
Yeah.
because eventually I'm going to want to stop doing Lori,
Yeah.
And have like some of my other characters. So I
Let's
started
hope you
introducing.
get a chance to stop doing Lori.
Yeah, right. Right. But then I don't know, a part of me is like still an asshole. So like when she's not mayor, I'll probably still do shit acting like she thinks she is.
Why not?
Or write a book. I
not?
want to write a book, like an actual book, like Becoming Lori, like a real book.
Yeah.
So I have plans of any character that you see, blowing them out into just like individuals who have their own content suites of podcasts and just silly shit, like they're really people. And yeah, high quality content and more. You'll see me on TV more. I just don't know whose show it's going to be or when it's going to be, but you'll definitely see my face more. This is around a time where stuff starts to stretch out, where like you could shoot something, but people won't see it until next year. Right. Or you could shoot something and then it does a tour around of festivals for a year and then you see it in. So there are some people, the certain like high quality stuff, it probably really won't be cracking for real until like 2024.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, one of the best parts of what you do, real quick, is when you say hi when you do Lori. That hi is the funniest shit to me ever, because that's like her introductory to everything when she actually is speaking to someone.
Yeah.
And I promised I wasn't going to talk about her a lot, but she's
Hi.
Yes, that's everything to me. Lisa, thank you.
I appreciate it.
I appreciate
My
you.
pleasure.
We will definitely have to do this again.
Yeah, for real.
For sure. And your daughter won't be 12. It'll be like soon.
Yeah, she could be a guest too.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Always. Thanks for being on Randomly Selected.
For sure.
Lisa Beasley did it. Thank you again, my friend, for coming on the show. It took us a while to get here, but we did, and I really appreciate you being on with us. Our next episode of Randomly Selected, we are going to get a lot of really poignant information from a woman that knows how it went down. Helen Schiller, former alderman of Uptown, will be our next guest on Randomly Selected. Thanks for listening, everybody. Please tell your people, subscribe, download, spread the word, whatever. Billboards, paper planes, do what you got to do. Thanks for listening, y'all. See you soon. Peace.